What if your biggest idea came from your most embarrassing moment? Welcome to Story Studio 91, where we find extraordinary stories in the most ordinary places. Picture this: Sara, standing in her tiny apartment bathroom, staring at her reflection. Tonight was a big deal, a party where she could finally network, meet the right people, and maybe, just maybe, change her life. She'd spent money she didn't really have on a stunning new white dress. It fit like a glove, but there was one huge problem: her pantyhose. The ugly seam at the toes was peeking out of her open-toed shoes. It looked awful. In a moment of frustration, Sara grabbed a pair of scissors. Snip, snip! She cut the feet right off the pantyhose. She slipped them back on perfect. A smooth, seamless look. But then, a new disaster. The cut ends started rolling up her legs. She'd pull them down, and they'd roll right back up. Frustrated, doesn't even begin to cover it. Here she was, 27 years old, selling fax machines door to door, a job she absolutely despised. She was barely scraping by, dreaming of being an entrepreneur, but with no business, no brilliant idea, and certainly no money. Just a pile of debt and a heavy cloud of disappointment. As she looked at the ruined pantyhose in her hand, a spark ignited in her brain. What if she could create footless pantyhose that actually stayed put? Comfortable, effective shapewear that solved this universal problem for women? It seemed like a small, almost silly idea, but it took root in her mind and wouldn't let go. The very next day, she headed to the library and dove into research on the hosiery industry. She was shocked to learn it was a multi-billion-dollar market, and she discovered a universal truth: women everywhere hated their pantyhose. They were uncomfortable, unflattering, and completely impractical. Sara didn't just see a problem, she saw a massive opportunity. She had $5,000 in savings. That was her entire nest egg. It was her rent money, her grocery money, her safety net. She could play it safe, or she could bet everything she had on this crazy idea about footless shapewear. Sara made her choice. She chose the idea. She spent the next grueling years trying to develop her product. She knew nothing about manufacturing, patents, or running a business. But she was a quick study. She started calling hosiery mills one by one, explaining her vision for footless pantyhose. The reaction was always the same: laughter. "That's the dumbest idea we've ever heard," they'd say. "Women don't want that." 14 mills, 14 rejections. But Sara refused to give up. She dialed the 15th mill. The owner said no, just like all the others. But in a twist of fate, his daughters overheard the call. They rushed to their dad. "Dad, that's actually a brilliant idea," they insisted. "We would totally buy that." The owner, swayed by his own target market, called Sara back. "Okay," he said, "I'll help you." Sara was ecstatic, but another huge hurdle appeared: patents. They cost thousands, and lawyers cost even more. Sara's savings were long gone. Undeterred, she marched into a Barnes & Noble and bought a book titled Patents for Dummies. Night after night, she sat at her kitchen table, studying the book and painstakingly writing her own patent application. She filed it herself. A year later, it was approved. Sara officially owned the intellectual property for footless, body-shaping pantyhose. Now, she needed a name. For weeks, she brainstormed. She'd read somewhere that words with a K sound are catchy, and products with double letters sell better. She played with sounds. Spanx, Spanx, Spanx. It was perfect. Fun, memorable, and just a little bit cheeky. She created a prototype and tried it on. It worked like a dream. Her body looked smooth, her legs looked great. No visible lines, no unflattering bumps, and best of all, no rolling up her legs. But now came the most intimidating part: selling it. Sara took her samples directly to the big leagues: Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, Bloomingdale's. She walked into the buyers' offices with unshakable confidence. "I have a revolutionary new product," she'd declare. The buyers, mostly experienced women in retail, were skeptical. "Show me," they'd say. So Sara did something incredibly bold. She'd take the buyer right into the ladies' room. "Okay, look at me now," she'd say, wearing her normal clothes with regular pantyhose. Then, she'd change into her Spanx prototype. Now look. The difference was undeniable. The buyer's eyes would widen in amazement. That's incredible, they'd gasp. And just like that, Sara landed her first order from 7 stores. It wasn't a massive deal, but it was a start. Then, something happened that would change everything forever. Oprah Winfrey discovered Spanx. She fell in love with them and featured them on her legendary favorite things list. Almost overnight, Spanx exploded. Orders poured in. Sara was working 18-hour days, packing boxes from her apartment floor, answering every customer call, and single-handedly managing all the inventory. She was a true one-woman show. Sales skyrocketed. $1 million, $10 million, $50 million, $100 million. And here's the amazing part, Sara never took a single dollar of outside investment. She owned 100% of her company. She made every decision, controlled every detail, and built Spanx from a kitchen table idea into a billion-dollar empire. In 2012, Forbes magazine named Sara Blakely the youngest self-made female billionaire in America. She was just 41 years old. She had started with only $5,000 and a pair of scissors. But Sara never forgot the struggle. She remembered the rejections, the laughter, and the constant chorus of people telling her the idea was stupid. So, she started a foundation, donating millions to help other female entrepreneurs get their start. She became a mentor to young women, teaching them the most important lesson she ever learned. Believe in yourself even when nobody else does. Especially when nobody else does. One day, a young woman approached her nervously at a conference. "Ms. Blakely," she began, "I have an idea for a business, but I'm so scared. What if I fail?" Sara just smiled, remembering that moment in her bathroom, scissors in hand, feeling that mix of desperation and hope. "Failure isn't the opposite of success," Sara told her. "Failure is part of success. Every no just gets you closer to a yes. Every rejection teaches you something valuable. The only real failure is not even trying." The young woman's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Sara gave her a hug because she understood. She knew what it felt like to have a dream with no resources, an idea with no support, and ambition with no clear path forward. But she also knew the most powerful secret of all. You don't need anyone's permission to start. You don't need a perfect plan, and you certainly don't need $1 million. You just need courage, maybe a pair of scissors, and the willingness to cut away everything that isn't serving your vision. Today, Spanx is a global phenomenon, sold in over 50 countries, empowering millions of women to feel their most confident. And it all started in a tiny bathroom with a simple problem and a bold solution. Does Sara's story inspire you to take action on your own idea? If it does, smash that like button and subscribe to Story Studio 91 for more incredible stories that prove ordinary people can build extraordinary things. Now tell us in the comments, what's one bold move you've been afraid to make? Your idea might just be the next $1 billion success. Thanks for watching.